All right. Welcome back, Hostfully Nation, and welcome to those who are new to this webinar. We are super excited about the topic today, AI, Chat GPT. Obviously, we're here to learn some pretty cool stuff, and we brought an awesome partner of ours, Enso Connect. Francois is the CEO over there, and he's going to lay on some pretty big knowledge bombs on you guys. So stay tuned. We got some people that are going to be joining the room here. So in the meantime, we're just going to pop up some polls, get a feel of the room, and kind of, since we can't hear or see you guys, just kind of know who you are. So first one we're going to exactly. So first one we're going to pop up is, where are you guys from? So definitely helps us. Myself, I'm tuning in from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Beautiful land of cornfields, bean fields, and South Dakota, home of the only palace made out of corn in the entire world. So fun fact for you guys. Got Francois joining us from Canada, Toronto, I believe, right, Francois?
That's correct.
That's right. The six is somewhat anyone under the age of 35 would know. But and we got my colleague Marcos Gavasa over in Malaga. Is that right, Marcos?
Yeah, that's right. In Malaga, Spain.
Very nice, man. Well, thank you both for joining today. And then let's just get a feel on how many properties you guys have. Help us gear this to you the best as possible. And then what would be great to know is how familiar everyone here is with GPT, AI, all that good stuff. And I know we use it quite a bit over here at Hostfully. Obviously, Enso does too, which is what we're going to find a little bit more about today. And then one last fun one, guys. We got any plans for the 4th of July? We partying, we laying low, staying in. Maybe you're not U.S., so maybe it's just a silly holiday for you, and maybe you don't know yet. So.
And we've got the 1st of July for Canada Day. So
that's right. Canada Day, 1st of July. Remember to throw a shout out to our Canadian friends.
Amen.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys for participating in that poll. And we got some more people that have joined, so we can just kind of get started on things. First thing I want to point out, in the bottom right of everyone's screen, there's a tab labeled questions. Right here, Bryce already made a comment. Thanks, Bryce. Freedom State. That's right, man. But where that tab is, guys, like I said, we can't hear or see you. So type any question you might have. Marcos is going to be monitoring that on the back end, answering everything he can or bringing it up to us. We'll try to talk about it. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end too. So if we don't get to it, we'll circle back. If it's anything that maybe requires a more one-on-one conversation, we can line that up as well. So awesome. And one last thing, guys, we got some fun emojis. You'll notice those popping up on your screen. Now at the very bottom, there is a little tab called React. So if you're digging the intro so far, give me a thumbs up. If it's terrible, give me a sad face. And if you guys don't understand anything, you know, that ghost face, the oh my gosh face, throw us one of those if something doesn't make sense. Hard eyes if you love it. But yeah, let us know. So. All right. Well, just want to throw in a quick word. Hostfully, obviously the sponsor of this webinar. For those who aren't familiar with Hostfully, we are a tip-to-tail management platform for those in the vacation rental industry. So biggest product being our property management platform, going to help you to connect with many different channels, many different awesome integrations to help automate your operations. Wow, that was a mouthful. But tons of good integrations, just like Enso Connect. A lot of good things and templates and triggers you can do with that. I think Francois is going to touch on that a little bit later. We get a lot of comments about our pipeline view and how easy it is to just kind of know where everything's at in the process for guest-wise, and whether there's any payments due, whether a check-in's coming up, check-out. And we also get a lot of comments about our customer service. So a lot of good things going over at Hostfully. We also complement that with our digital guidebooks, basically a web page where everything that your guests would need to know, from getting to the property, accessing the place, where to park, how to use everything throughout the property. You can make that live all in one spot, super easy to use. So great way to just boost up those reviews, even do some upselling within those guidebooks for during their stay. And then, of course, the post-stay follow-ups and trying to get more direct bookings in the future. So some awesome products that Hostfully offers. We've won many awards for those. Got a quote here from Terry White. He's usually on here. So Terry, give us a shout out if you're joining us today. But great quote from him was that Hostfully is one of the best softwares he has ever seen. We get a lot of compliments on our guidebooks too. Won awards from that. But just posted a testimonial here, just showing you guys, again, how much time you can save, how much better of an experience it can provide for your guests. And of course, tons of other options with this as well. Just another avenue from Hostfully. And then I wanted to pop up one poll here, guys, just to see if we have any Hostfully customers joining us today. So if you could go ahead and answer that, that would be awesome. And since we're at it, we might as well see if we have any Enso Connect customers up here as well. And a software aside, you guys, maybe you already have a PMS, maybe you have a good system in place, and you don't need Hostfully, and that's totally fine. Another thing we offer is just great educational resources to grow. Tons of reports like industry studies, blogs about how to grow, and of course, webinars like we're doing today. So I think I noticed a lot of people had under less than 20 properties. So we have a great report, or I should say a case study on growing and how to get to 20 properties and beyond. So yeah, happy to help. We want to help you guys scale, which is why we brought Francois on today. And again, my name is Mitch Foster. I'm our partnerships and integrations manager here at Hostfully. I'm joined by my colleague Marcos Gavasa and Francois. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the last name Francois because I know I'm going to butcher it. Although you always want to say Francois when I say your name. But appreciate you coming on, man. A little bit about Francois, obviously co-founder, CEO of Enso Connect. Enso started a little bit before the pandemic and scaled from 68 listings to over 20,000 now, and in 53 different countries. Francois himself has been recognized as the City of Toronto's Entrepreneur of the Year, voted the most innovative prop tech CEO of 2020 in the UK, and represented Canada at the G20 Summit for the Young Entrepreneurs Alliance Group. Also, he was nominated as a Rising Star for the STR industry by the Shorties Awards, which we just saw a quote from Terry White. He's been nominated consecutively this year and last year, which is a huge deal. Last thing, recognized as one of the 30 most innovative and inspiring Canadian entrepreneurs of the year. Gosh, we got a lot of tongue twisters.
That's a lot of awards now. Sasha,
it is. She really listed them out. That's great. But honestly, Francois, I think my favorite thing that you have in your resume, Francois, he was a scuba diving instructor and also rides a Beachman motorcycle. And with all the chaos and headlines going on with going deep underwater, I don't know if I'll be trying that one anytime soon, Francois.
That's fair. That's fair. That's a good way to segue that. Well, I appreciate it, Mitch. Is there something else you want to share? Are we good?
That's good, man. I just want to say again, thanks for joining, and thanks for everyone else for hopping on, and let's dive into it and have a great convo here.
I love it. I love it. For context, the Beachman motorcycle that Sasha shared is a fully electric motorcycle, which is the coolest thing. I ride to work every day. But anyways, enough about motorcycles or about myself. So my name is Francois, again, a co-founder and CEO of Enso Connect. We are a guest experience platform for the vacation rental industry. So we plug in seamlessly with Hostfully as property management systems. We also provide a cool web app called the Boarding Pass, which is going to connect to smart locks, has different upsell capabilities, verification capabilities, and also plugs in with Hostfully's guidebooks. So if you're using Hostfully's guidebooks, you can simply embed them directly into your boarding pass. If you want to learn a bit more about what our clients are doing with Enso Connect, you can check out some of the case studies, whether it's making more money, more revenue with upsells, whether it's reducing the amount of chargebacks and fraudulent guests, increasing the automation ratio or inquiry conversions, and so on. We've got a bunch of case studies on there that we're always adding. I'm going to skip this slide since we already introduced me, but in terms of content for today, so we're basically going to talk about 3 key topics, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So the first one is going to be looking at GPT-4 or Chat GPT, as you may have heard in the industry, giving you a bit of an overview on what it is, how it works, what are the different models behind it. So we might go a bit technical. If it is too technical for you, definitely do the ghost face emoji, and I'll try to skim through it as best as I can. We are going to talk about enhancing your guest experience. Oh, I'm already getting some ghost emojis. Okay, let's jump right into the Q&A. No, I'm joking. We'll go into enhancing the guest experience as well. So just understanding kind of more what types of workflows you should be thinking of when interacting with your guests. And then finally, some really cool monetization opportunities that you can do with or without Enso Connect. Doesn't really matter. I don't want this to be a sales pitch, even though we're going to drop in a few examples with Enso here. But just kind of giving you an idea of what to think of when you're trying to monetize additional elements of your guest experience. Without ado, let's get started. So, question, and Mitch, I know you've already seen the answer. So I was going to ask you, I don't know, Marcos, if you've seen the answer as well, but what is the one system or act that makes hospitality truly unique? One of you want to take a crack at it?
I must have missed the answer because
Fair enough.
I don't know.
Okay, well, we're going to go with communication. Communication is a pillar of hospitality. Whether it's communicating with your owners, whether it's communicating with your guests, your team, your staff, whatever it is, communication is one of the pillars of hospitality. And why is this important to look at? Well, every vacation rental property is different. Every guest is different. Every operator is different. Every booking channel is different. Every owner is different. So communicating with all the different stakeholders in your business can be fairly complicated. And obviously, there's tools out there and so on, but we're going to look at a bit more how AI is going to help with that problem. Enter ChatGPT. Now, why are we talking about ChatGPT? As you guys can probably see from the poll, I see about 33% of you are familiar but don't use it. 28% use it regularly. 21% use it daily. And 19% have never used it but like to learn how. So why are we talking about it? Well, in 5 days, ChatGPT got to over 1 million users. Took Airbnb about 2.5 years. Took Netflix 3.5. Took Instagram 2.5 months. So it is one of the fastest growing technologies out there. And there's a quote that I love stealing from Evan from this company called Adaptive, which is the humans that use AI will replace the ones that don't. So learning a bit more. I love
that quote.
I know, right? It's just very powerful, I find. It's not about replacing humans. It's about replacing the humans who don't use these types of technologies.
That's exactly right. And there's a lot of people that are scared about, you know, what it'll do to jobs. And that 100%. Statement right there really opens up opportunities.
100%. And so this is where thinking about how you can start implementing it in your business is going to be important. But first, we're going to kind of give you a bit of an overview of what it is, how it works, and so on. So this is my favorite graph because it is the Gartner's hype cycle. And many of you might feel like you're in one of those stages where you learn about ChatGPT. You heard it on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and you're grabbing drinks with a friend. Someone talked about it, and you're like, what is this? And then you sign up, and it's free, at least the 3.5 model, and you use it, and you're like, oh, my goodness. This is going to solve every single problem I have. This is going to replace my job. I will be able to just sit at home, watch Netflix, and it will do everything for me. But then you start using it again and a bit more, and you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't exactly work the way I need it to work. And then you get to that bottom of the hype cycle where you're like, damn, yeah, no, I can't use that. So my role is to get you to understand how it works and how you can actually use it. It's not going to be that same wow factor you probably got a few months ago when it got released, but it's at least going to be useful in specific verticals in your hospitality business. And we're going to start off with, again, that quote, humans that embrace AI will outperform those that don't. Actually, that's a slightly cleaner way of using that quote. So ChatGPT, what is it? Large language model. All it is it's a stats game. So AI is not some magic. It's just statistics. All it is looking and trained on a huge amount of data to answer messages for you. It works in 3 different types of models. and you can take a screenshot of this if you want to kind of dive into it deeper. We're not going to dive into this too much. It is a combination of a supervised model, a reward model, and a reinforcement learning model. What that means, supervised model, create a set of rules to say yes or no. That was a good answer. That was a bad answer. That was a good answer. That was a bad answer. The reward model is going to reward based on the ranking of these outputs. So saying, well, this was a better answer and this was a worse answer. And reinforcement learning is going to keep that loop going. So supervise, then reward, supervise, then reward. And we're going to do this across thousands, if not millions, if not sometimes trillions of data sets. And I don't even joke when I say trillions, because in fact, the difference between 3.5 and 4.0 is one's trained on 175 billion data points, and 4.0 is trained on 1 trillion data points. So the difference between the two, if you're thinking, should I be paying $20 a month to OpenAI, or should I just be using the free one that's accessible to everyone? One's optimized for speed, great for responding to emails, great for just kind of rewording certain things in a better tone. 4.0 is going to be more useful for answering guests, getting more into the context of the information, figuring out what is the context of this response that I need to write up. So this gives you a bit of a difference between the two. The accuracy also does depend on the language. So if you are a property manager that is not based in a English-speaking country, or most of your guests are not English-speaking, the accuracy may go down a bit further. I believe French is okay, German is okay, Spanish is okay, but then it gets kind of different for the rest of the languages out there. So quick little difference about 3.5, 4.0. If you're ever thinking about, should I be paying $20 a month for access to the more enhanced version of ChatGPT? Now, ChatGPT and hospitality. Well, there are so many different places that you can use it. We do have templates on our website of how you can basically create the best prompts. But just to give you a bit of an idea of where this is, you're going to start seeing the implementation of AI, whether it's in your PMS, whether it's in your guest experience platform, or even your cleaning and operations tools, pretty much any systems that you're going to be using. So things like customer service chats, things like booking assistance, things like personalized recommendations, language translation, room services, concierge services, and such. And in fact, one of the key things that Enso Connect is as part of our unified messaging system, which, mind you, you can use with Hostfully, you can use with Enso Connect, doesn't really matter because of our API connection. We are launching a fully fleshed out ChatGPT integration. So this will allow you to generate those prompts and look at all of the information 4.0 using that algorithm, looking at the context of your Hostfully guidebooks, of your listing information, your guest profiles, and so on. So this is one way of doing it, but there's going to be other types of companies doing it in other ways, so like descriptions of your properties, rewriting them quickly without having to necessarily spend too much time, as well as some of my favorites are going to be around creating content. So your guides in Hostfully, using that tool to better word certain things and get your message across, and so on. One quick tip, I didn't include it in these slides. Check out Mac GPT if you have a MacBook. If you have a PC, I'm sorry, but I'm sure they have a PC version of it. It's a great way to plug in GPT on your computer and have it accessible to everything. So every time you type, you can use prompts to generate responses. It's also a great way to connect existing information about your company, such as if you're using Google Drive, if you're using things like Notion, or wherever you're storing information to communicate between your teams, so that if they have questions, they can ask this sort of internal bot instead of going to your team and, you know, taking time out of everyone's day. So just a little tip there in terms of yet another example where it's not just guest facing, it's not just with your guest experience or property management, but also internally with your teams, that this technology is going to be helpful.
What was that one called, Francois?
We've got Mac GPT, and then we have, what was the other one actually? Mac GPT is the one that you can plug into your MacBook, and then, sorry, chatbase.co is one that you can connect all these different sources, and it's basically you creating your own internal chatbot. So like a resource that you can just ask questions. This is something we've done with our company, where now if our sales team or our onboarding team or our support team or anyone has questions, instead of, you know, ping-ponging each other and, maybe disturbing each other during the day, we can first ask chatbase.co. And if it's good, we got the answer, move on. If we didn't, then of course, you know, always ask your team, your boss, whoever it is.
That's interesting, man. There's so many new tools coming out like every single day. I don't know if anyone here has heard of Futurepedia, just kind of a reference website. Just has a ton of different tools that are AI, GPT related. So good place to browse if you get bored. You might get lost like you're scrolling on TikTok, but
I love that. I didn't even know about Futurepedia, so I'll definitely be checking out.
Yeah, it's a cool little
and I
site.
will be getting lost on it probably. Amazing. So if you want to join the waitlist, by the way, you're more than welcome to. We put the QR code up here, and I believe Mitch is going to be sharing the link as well in this view. So you can absolutely join our waitlist. It'll be made accessible for everyone by the end of July. For now, it's being tested to make sure we have all of the right information indexed. One of the key things around AI and ChatGPT is it's all about the information that you give it. So the more information you give it, the better it'll be. And that is actively what we're looking at. So a little bit about ChatGPT. So start thinking about how you can implement this in your business. Honestly, whether it's with guests, whether it's with your internal teams, or whether it's in your operations in general, there are hundreds of tools. Futurepedia, chatbase.co, MacGPT, Enso's now implementing it as well within our messaging tools, and much more. Now, let's talk a bit more, though, about enhancing that guest experience. This is a subject I am very much connected to as a guest experience platform, but also something that I personally love talking about and having debates and discussing, because I think it goes back to the same question of what is the one system or act that makes hospitality truly unique? Communication. So figuring different ways of communicating with your guests, understanding who they are, and changing the different workflows is something that we're going to explore right now for the next couple of minutes. And again, we're going to always go back to that same subject of understanding that in the vacation rental space, everything is different. I think this is what makes hotels versus vacation rentals so unique, is that in hotels, and Mitch, you might see this as well with Hostfully, if you guys ever sign up different hotels where it's kind of just all the same and it's very easy to set up because it's like, here's different booking channels, but also here's the property itself with rooms, versus vacation rental where it's like, well, and I think I saw this in one of the polls where someone said, what's it called? They had properties in New York, but they also had properties somewhere else. So it's, again, this idea of everything being different. And I just opened up the questions part. Mitch, should we be answering questions along the way? Should we keep it more for the end?
I think Marcos is getting to them. Marcos, okay. If there's anything that you want to toss out there, just let us know. Otherwise, we'll get to some stuff at the end.
Yeah, I have only one question I couldn't answer just because I'm not sure. It's about where ChatGPT 4.5, 4.0 is available. I don't know the link. I'm not sure with it. So if you, Francois, know it and you can answer the price, would be wonderful.
So it depends on tokens. I'm not exactly sure the detail behind each token. I believe the tokens are 1,000 words generated. So it's kind of a weird way to math things out. And you can get a base kind of complete package for about $20 a month on OpenAI. So if you go to openai.com, but it really depends on your usage. If you're using it a lot and you're analyzing a lot of text and you're answering a lot of questions, then your cost will go up. But all in all, for what it can accomplish for your business, and honestly, I'm willing to pay the $20, even if it can redraft some of my emails that are just poorly written. It's already helpful there. I also see another question, actually, I'll just address right now before we dive into the whole guest workflow and so on, around is chatbase.co respectful of confidentiality? This is one thing around ChatGPT in general, whether it's through Chatbase or other systems, with regards to confidentiality and privacy. This is a risk. You are sharing information with an open system that's going to use it to train itself. So private information is not recommended to be shared, specifically financial numbers or your client's data or things like that. I would not recommend it unless you spin off your own instance just for yourself of ChatGPT or any of these transformer-based algorithms. That's a bit more technical. This is something that Enso Connect, this is why it's taken us time to train and so on, is because we're making sure that we're respecting everyone's account so that it's not like answering messages with information from other people's accounts, which is one of the risks around just AI in general when you're using large data sets. So I hope that answers your question, Eric. So I would restrict it to just basic information about your services, things that will get your team up and running quickly. So back to the subject of everything being different, let's think about how we can solve this. If this, then that. This is really the fundamental of, I want to say, technology in general. I mean, if you ever wrote code, it's all if statements, then for loops. It's kind of this kind of context. My background's in computational linguistics, computer science. So the number of if statements I've had to write in the past couple of years is pretty much that. But I want you guys to think about, when you're thinking about your guest experience, how you can start breaking it down in different workflows and how you can solve it with this kind of principle. So I've drafted out an example guest experience. This is not any particular client. It's kind of just an overview so that you can get more context on how you should be thinking about this for your business. This is something Hostfully can help with. This is something Enso Connect can absolutely help with. I mean, it's at the bread and butter of what Enso does. So we're going to go through a few examples. So the booking is confirmed. We send a message, maybe our boarding pass, maybe some more information. Pretty simple. So if booking is confirmed, then send message. Now, what happens if it's an Airbnb reservation versus if it's a booking.com reservation? And again, this is a very light example. You could go in and create 35 different branches to this based on your business. So what I recommend is, if you have time, I like to do these kind of brainstorming sessions with my co-founder on Sundays, but whenever works best for you, to just grab a whiteboard and start writing down these different workflows that you have for your guests and for your overall property management business. So right after the guest's booking is confirmed, let's think about verification. Now, there's people who don't like having to verify at all. There's some people who do. Verification is a big piece of removing fraudulent guests, chargebacks, and so on, but it can also create friction in your guest journey. I ran a webinar recently with AutoHost just yesterday on all the different things verification related. So definitely check it out if you have time. It was an awesome just conversation with Austin there, their head of partnerships and sales and so on. So Airbnb versus Booking.com. If you're in the US, you're probably laughing looking at Booking.com on this thing, being like, yeah, I'm not putting it on. And Airbnb already kind of has some verification procedures. So maybe you want a different flow to avoid different tension. But what happens if they don't get verified? Do we send them a request again? Do we pass them on to the next stage? So these are all the different types of non-intrusive ways of thinking of your guest journey. Another one would be sending that pre-check-in message. Pretty simple. When do you send it? Do you send it 5 hours before, 6 months before? Does it depend on the type of guest bookings that you get? We have operators on Enso Connect. We get a lot of last-minute bookings. So creating an automation or some sort of workflow for 3 months before isn't really helpful. But doing something that's more 5-10 days before is going to prove to be more beneficial. This is a great way to also remove that number of messages at the pre-check-in stage, which is usually the one of the places where you're going to get a lot of communication from your guests. So the goal is really not just to automate it, but to also actually remove it fully so they're confident about their stay they're going to have and it meets their expectation. Check-ins. What happens if you have units with smart locks, some without smart locks? You can't just create a simple template to send the codes because maybe the code's going to be different, things like that. So you have to start thinking as well about that workflow at the check-in process. And then my personal favorites, which is upsells and guidebooks. So being able to think about those workflows as well as you're tailoring the personas that you're targeting. So if you're in a ski destination and it's the winter, let's make sure that you point out all the right things for skiing. If it's a family trip versus a work trip and you're in an urban destination, being able to understand that information and tailor the guest experience as well. And last but not least, some basic things, guidebooks as well. If it's a summer, winter, checkout, when to send the checkout. So I really, really recommend just going on a whiteboard, drawing out all those different workflows. We've run that exercise with a few of our clients, and what we've seen is beyond impressive. Like there's 36 average different workflows that operators will create when they make that exercise because of how complex managing a vacation rental is. And I haven't even dived into operational side of things. So being able to, you know, let your cleaners know, or being able to let your owners know about certain things. So we're going to give you a few examples. One last one that I have that is a good example to kind of tie that AI conversation that we had with the concept of workflows, understanding the sentiment of your conversation with your guests. AI will allow you to track the sentiment of a conversation. I mean, it's like reading a message, right? You read a text message or a conversation that your friend sends you, and you're going to look at that and you're like, oh, that's a really nice person, or wow, that was a really mean thing to say. You can kind of get a vibe or a sense of the person on the other side of the phone. AI can do that as well for you, which is something we do at Enso, allowing you then to create a workflow to say, well, if they're happy, let's remind them to leave a review. If they're not happy, let's not remind them to leave a review. And you can do this without having to send a survey. A lot of tools or platforms will do that with a survey, but that's just an additional step, and it can create friction again in your guest journey. So this gives you a bit of an idea of a workflow, but I'll give you some cool, unique items just to kind of spark some ideas. And Mitch, feel free to jump in here if you have some ideas as well around some nice workflows that you can do that'll help with guest experience, owners, property management, and so on. I'll start with this one. Prevent last minute fraud. When the guest booking is confirmed, if it's a last minute reservation, then let's get a verification going with Superhot, or let's get a verification going with AutoHost. Increase positive reviews when the guest checks out, as the example I just gave in, is if sentiment is greater than, let's say, neutral or satisfied, and they're really highly satisfied, then let's remind the guest to leave a review. Mitch, do you have any examples? Maybe some that are available as well in Hostfully?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're speaking about automations, right? I think it's pretty safe to say everyone here is looking to save some time. And
Amen.
I think there's a lot of property managers on here. Big thing is communication with owners too. So a big thing people do in Hostfully, they'll automatically send reports, analytics to that owner at the end of the month or every other week, whatever their timeline might be. But another way to, again, incorporate communication, the biggest thing.
Yeah. 100%.
And we did have a question too regarding Hostfully and Enso specifically.
Yeah.
Monique, how you doing? Thanks for asking this one. She's basically asking if for this Enso messaging, will that replace templates and triggers on Hostfully? Because, you know, it's essentially the same thing, just a different, I guess, start point to the whole thing. Yeah.
100%. So it's not going to replace it. You're going to still see different workflows. We're going to add a few other types of workflows in that sense. So things like upsells, getting notifications around different upsells that are being purchased or not, and who to communicate that with, whether it's with your cleaners or other people. Being able to create special types of fees as part of the post-booking process for resort taxes, pet fees, and so on that are not necessarily as part of the OTAs. So it's complementary is what I would say. Now you can create the automations, the basic automations in Hostfully. You can create them in Enso Connect. You can have them in both. It doesn't really matter because we have an API connection anyways. If you prefer using our unified inbox for the ChatGPT component, you can as well. I think, Mitch, if I'm not mistaken, we're discussing right now two-way syncing the messages as well with Hostfully, so that any message that are in Enso will appear in Hostfully and vice versa. So it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, that should be September. We'll say by the end of the year, just so no one holds me accountable. Okay.
Yeah, 100%. But it is something we're looking at as well, just so that way it's not like, oh, am I doing my messaging here or my messaging there? It does not matter where you do it, as long as you can provide the best guest experience. But thank you for the question, Monique. Yeah, it's a good question. Next,
and then one more, just spinning off that. Rich had a question too about with your connection. So when you guys send messages from Enso, let's say it's through Airbnb, because Hostfully has that direct inbox integration with Airbnb. Does Enso's messages go to Airbnb, or is it through email, texting? What's kind of the flow there?
Airbnb, email, SMS, and WhatsApp, all in one single unified inbox. That's kind of how we started. The boarding pass is our key product in that sense, since it kind of ties all of this and really removes the amount of questions that you get in the first place. So again, it just goes back to where you want to send these automations and how you want to create workflows. When it comes to native channels, I think when it comes to Airbnb, we're sending the emails to the secured messaging, but I can double check on that and send that. I should probably know this. Sorry, Rich. Every PMS is slightly different. We integrate with different PMSs, but Hostfully definitely has a strong connection with Airbnb. So I don't see why that would be an issue. I see some laughing emojis already. Sorry about that. It's probably my team being like, Francois, you should know this. Amazing. So we've got a few more examples here. I've got another one. Are there any other questions, Mitch, that we should jump on?
We can keep going for now, and we can circle back on the Q&A.
For sure, for sure.
Right.
So another one, be proactive one day after check-in, send a message to make sure everything is good, and use that data point to then create other types of automation. So this is where it gets really exciting, is if you know that they're happy one day before or one day after their check-in, what can you do with that, right? Can you create another automation? Can you feed that into ChatGPT to create different types of messages for your guests, or increase revenue with upsells, which we will dive into a bit further. So enhancing communication, thinking about that workflow. And again, whether you build some of it in Hostfully, some of it in Enso, all in Hostfully or all in Enso, does not matter. At the end of the day, it is all about your guests, your owners, your properties, and your business as a whole. Next off, I have quite a few examples, actually. I didn't realize how many slides. Don't worry, guys. There's about 15 more of these slides for examples. I'm joking. I think this is our last one. But this one is going to be around devices. So this is another example. If we connect with so Enso Connect connects with dozens of smart locks, August, Yale, Schlage, Nuki, Igloo, Salto, you name it. So things like, well, what happens when a device is disconnected? Or what happens when there's battery issues? Oh, I have to remember, I have to check that. Send a message to maintenance, send them an SMS, send them an email. Or if a guest needs to get re-verified because you couldn't really see the IDs, automate that task as well. So think about those workflows, draw it out on a whiteboard. And honestly, if you want to share it with me and send me an email of like, hey, Francois, I've had a few property managers do this. Like, here's what I drew. What are your thoughts? Let me know. This is, for me, one of the most exciting parts of building guest experiences at scale for hospitality operators. And I'm open for conversations like CEO, SMEO. Like, this is just a title. I'm a human, and I love having these conversations. Even if you have one property and you're just getting started on Hostfully, like, let me know. This is the most exciting part. So a quick little screenshot to answer your question, Rich, and what was it, Monique, in terms of just how this is done in Enso. So at a specific property, at a group of property, or all properties level, you can pick your when, your if, and your then, and create these different workflows. We go as far as displaying different information in your boarding pass based on these conditions. Things like, if the guest paid the pet fee, show if the guest paid the parking fee, show the parking instruction as part of your check-in flow. Simple, but why not? Let's add that to the mix. Now, monetizing it. We kind of gave you a little hint of AI. We talked about these different workflows and how you can automate different pieces of the puzzle, but how can you make more money along the way? Saving time is a big piece of technology that is out there for hospitality. There's also new technologies coming out, as an example, but also, Mount, Hostco, Local Bird, all these tools that are coming out with different upsell capabilities. So I wanted to show a bit more about how you can make more money. One of the first ones, though, is, what is the number one? Actually, I'll ask this to you, Mitch, or maybe Marcos, because I know you're on the sales side as well. What is the number one rule in sales?
Always be closing.
Okay. That is
ABC.
ABC.
I heard it on a movie once.
I know. That is actually the number one rule. So what's the, I guess, well, I'll skip the question. Marcos, unless you have another answer.
Not for now. My number one rule is just first engage and connect with a person, and then like everything goes smoothly.
100%. Well, I was going to say follow up. Make sure to follow up with your clients. Make sure to follow up with your prospects. Share information. And following up after an inquiry, if you just create a little follow-up, you will increase your inquiry to booking conversion by about 17%, 18% if you round it up. What does that mean? So this is something we do with Enso, but you can do it manually if you wanted to. If a guest inquires, create an automation, write a little message, but cancel that message if the guest books or replies before a specific time, and specifically 3 hours. Meaning the guest inquires and says, hey, do you guys have a hot tub, et cetera, et cetera. Platforms like Hostfully, platforms like Enso Connect, our role is to make sure we surface those inquiries as quickly as possible to reduce your average response time and make sure that you respond, because just responding is already a big part of increasing that inquiry to booking conversion. But by just creating a little follow-up rule and saying, you know what, I'm going to send another follow-up. Now that I've responded about the hot tub, I'm just going to create another rule to say, let's follow up and say, hey, are you still interested in booking with us? Well, they're messaging 5, 6, 10 different property managers on the different OTAs. And they're asking probably similar questions. The first one that answers has higher chances of getting the booking. But the first one to follow up increases even further that inquiry to booking conversion. So a little tip there, in terms of your guest communications and your guest service teams, it's really important to just kind of follow up with those inquiries so you can get more bookings, especially as this environment becomes more and more competitive. I'm sure some of you may have seen right now that bookings have kind of gone down. It's not the same thing. We reached our peak during COVID. What's going on? Well, it was such an interesting space that there's so many new property managers in this space. So it is getting competitive, most likely.
That's a good point. That's a good point. It doesn't, I mean, I've been an Airbnb manager for 3-4 years now. Middle of COVID, I mean, your place would be empty. It'd be booked within minutes. Now, this is a good thing for me because I get tons of inquiries myself, and implementing just a simple rule to follow up after a certain length of time. Like, I can see how that goes a long ways, because you know, I mean, we've all done it too. We reach out to 5, 6, 7 different listings, and then we just go with who's responding to us the most and the fastest.
Exactly. Because you're not going to waste your time sending an inquiry to something you're not interested in booking, right? So there's already that first interest, your pictures, the description, something captivated them enough for them to send you a message. Now it's on you to close that deal, to ABC, always be closing. Back to what Mitch was saying.
That's right, guys. If you take anything away from this webinar, it's always be closing.
Amen. So this is a quick little tip around just kind of following up, and an additional, I would say, monetization opportunity just by getting those more bookings. One of the key things I always tell my team is, like, if there's anything I want to build when it comes to tech, is it has to do one of 3 things. It either brings you more revenue, it brings you more bookings, or it brings you more owners. We don't really help with the owner piece, but we certainly help with the revenue and the bookings. So this is just one example of things that you should start thinking about implementing as part of your process. And again, you don't have to automate this. You can make it part of your culture, your service team's kind of structure with the existing tools you have, just so they can know that this is something they need to do as well. Now, to use that same concept of following up, but the timing and messaging your content well when it comes to upsells. Upsells are going to be things like early check-in, late checkout, mid-stay cleaning, but it can also be amenities that you want to rent out, or services that you want to be able to provide, like renting skis or renting a boat or doing an excursion, and so on. And one of the key things, just like in sales, as per usual, it's all about figuring out the timing of that message, the content of that message, and so on is appropriate. So I'll give you a few examples of what we've seen with Enso Connect in that sense, where check-in time. If you do a 2-hour check-in time over a 1-hour check-in time, you increase the opportunity of converting that upsell. Why? Because they don't feel cheaped out. They don't feel like, oh, I have to pay to be able to show up like 45 minutes before or an hour before. In fact, if you offer a 2-hour early check-in and a free 1-hour early check-in, you increase your conversion of that 2-hour early check-in. So it's all these little tips that we're constantly assessing with our guests, really useful information for you, and we will continuously make it available, of course, on our website and blogs and so on. Another thing is, let's say boat rentals. The better the description as well, the more likely it's going to convert. Now, this kind of seems obvious, but get them to kind of dream about what it's like to rent that boat. It's not just like, yeah, take it to the seas, it's clean and fast. It's more about, like, what's that experience going to be? Is it scuba gear? And I know I'm going to use scuba because I love scuba diving. Is it the treasure map? Is it the easy to use instructions? So safety is kind of your concern around it. Like, give them that experience before they've even purchased it is really, really important in your content description. This is stuff that you can do through your guidebooks. This is stuff you can do through your upsells and Enso and guidebooks and Hostfully and so on. So just think about that content. And one great way to do this is to use AI, to use ChatGPT to tell them, well, what kind of experience you think your clients want, and write out the description for the service providing that kind of experience. And last but not least, the timing. I gave a very extreme example here of 4 months versus 4 hours for an early check-in, but reminding a guest to purchase an early check-in months before is not going to convert as well as a few hours before. In fact, reminding a guest to purchase an early check-in during the booking process converts way less than one a few hours before. Why? Because people feel like they're add-ons and they skip them. It's like when you go on EasyJet, or I want to say Spirit Airlines, but I haven't flown with Spirit in so long, so I wouldn't know. But it feels like you're getting nickel and dimed as part of that booking process, whereas a few hours before, it feels like an optional add-on that is beneficial or not beneficial for you. So you feel like you have more choice to make that purchase. So if you take in these tips, you get to have a difference of 30% conversion on, well, this is actually the wrong number, but just the 24% conversion was inaccurate, I think. Anyways, I will get the accurate number on this one. I think I pulled it out just from the last data point here, but just the hourly is going to change it to a 1 in 3 guests will purchase an upsell. So again, it's all about figuring out timing, messaging, and so on. And in order for you to do that, think about that guest journey through your workflows and think about how AI can be placed into the different pieces of those workflows. So that's a bit about Enso Connect, about Hostfully, and about how to think about hospitality and some practical tips. Should we jump in some questions, Mitch?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's outstanding just information to share with everyone. I mean, those conversions, I mean, that's something that you don't really think about too much as a host when you're setting them up and just like, let's get something in place. Let's toss out, see if we can make some extra money, but being super intentional with it, you can see it goes a long ways.
100%. I just checked. There's a missing dot on that number. I'm opening up our Notion. It's 2.4, not 24.
Oh, okay. Well, still an increase nonetheless.
Basically, if you don't get your wording right, you don't time it right, you don't place the right items, you're gonna not get a lot of upsells versus that 1 in 3 mark where you really focus on what your guests want and when they want it. But yeah, let's jump into those questions, I guess.
Awesome. Yeah, we can just start at the top with Karen's question. Mm-hmm. So it looks like she's asking, will we only use the boarding pass to manage reservations and communication, or will we have to go back and forth? Also, do you create workflows, or will we have to basically redo the ones we have set up in Hostfully?
100%. Great question. So configuration is the name of the game. So boarding pass manage reservations, you're not managing reservations. You're going to manage basically the guest journey through the boarding pass. So yes, and communication will happen from the guest through the boarding pass. Now it is a web app. There is no downloads required. It's not an app that they have to download just for a quick stay. I would hate for people to do that. They just get to then interact with you via the boarding pass. They can click a little SMS button, sends them to the right number. They can click a little email button, sends them to the right place to send their message, or Airbnb, or whatever that is. What you tie that number, email, or Airbnb message to is up to you. That depends if you want to strictly use Hostfully's unified inbox, if you want to strictly use Enso Connect's unified inbox, or if you want to mix match the two. So for your other question around, will we have to jump between, was that part of the question?
Yep, that was part of that one.
Oh, I have to scroll up. Sorry. And then it's up to you if you want to jump, if you want to strictly use one inbox or the other. And in terms of recreating workflows, some will be turned off on Hostfully, but we already have everything templated. So it's one click enable to enable those templates because we've kind of seen what the best pattern is for that guest journey through the number of guests. We process about, I think, 1.2, 1.3 million guests now through our system. So we've seen what works, what doesn't. And of course, everything's different, but everything's different for every property manager, but we have a good sense of where things should go. Can we see a boarding pass sample? I love that question. And the reason this is a Bryce Clark question. The reason I love this question is because in a few days, our new website's going to come out and you'll be able to just scan a QR code and just run through a whole guest journey on a boarding pass yourself. So stay tuned, Bryce. If anything, my team will reach out and send you an example. In the meantime, if you don't want to wait a couple days to see it, there's a few videos on our website as well, things like that, but more than happy to get that new website up and running so you can test it yourself on a phone. Which ordering should I do, Mitch? Because I am seeing so many questions. This is such an engaged group of people. I love it.
I know. It's awesome. I would just start from the top. Rich had a question.
Yeah.
If non-tech people, does the boarding pass add any value to non-technical guests?
For sure. Well, we get that question a lot. And I did have once a guest that was didn't have a phone, right? So they didn't have an SMS number associated. They didn't have a phone, but since it's a web app, they can do it on their computer as well. So kind of like part of the booking flow, right? When they book, you're right. If they're calling to book a place, then chances are they're not going to get that information even on SMS, email, etc. We send this link via one of those communication channels. So as long as they have a phone or a computer and they can access that, then it's just really walking them through step by step all of these different settings that you've set up. It can happen that a guest just cannot go through this flow for whatever reason. I've rarely seen it. But if that's the case, then you can always revert back to skipping boarding pass and sending the information manually. I think a bit more clarity on that would be necessary, but I'll be honest, Rich, it's a question that I don't always like answering because I think a majority of guests, without trying to be ageist here or anything, regardless of age, will go through a flow as long as it's properly communicated. So yes, if you're sending this via Instagram or Facebook Messenger, this might get challenging for some of the older folks out there, but SMS and email, majority of people, that's how they're going to communicate and make their bookings and so on. And of course, if there's an issue, there's a little call button on the boarding pass and they can call you right away. So there's always that.
There you go.
Amazing. For the short-term market in general, what are good resources to find information about the SCR market in general, specific areas of the country, and predictions about the future? So I would look at Rabu, Transparent, and AirDNA. But Mitch, you might know this better. I feel like this is the kind of information that, the white papers that you guys pull out have a lot of cool information around that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And what you mentioned is great. I would add key data to the list. And then we also have, well, I don't have it available, but I'll put in the follow-up message to everyone here. We have some great educational resources that I mentioned. So we actually have an industry report specifically for this question, Matt. So we'll be sure to put that in the follow-up. And again, this is where all the webinars live too. So if you want to browse any other information, great place to help you guys grow.
100%. 100%. Do you have connections with the police authorities to send the entry reports? So we are actively working on this. We work with a partner called AutoHost, and they're doing a partnership to allow authority reporting. That being said, you can always export the information and send it off. It is a very, very complicated subject, specifically around Europe, because every country is different. Spain, you have to send it to la Guardia Nacional or Municipal. In Italy, it's per region. In France, it's per department, I think. I don't know if they have a rule. In Austria as well, it's its own system. So every country is different. So Hoteles Bruga, I don't know where you're located, but you can certainly reach out to us and we can help you solve that somewhat in a currently manual-ish way, but at least aggregating all that information in one click. And then very soon, probably in Q3, Q4, the automation for that. Pricing, Rich, love that question. Now, we do have our pricing available on our website. The trade-off is that we ask your email, phone number, and all this information, and that probably someone on my team will reach out to you. But once you go through that, you will see the pricing on the website. So it's not like you need to, it's not like you put all this information, you don't get anything out of it. You'll see the actual number on the website. Since no one in this industry really shares their pricing and it's always the book a demo before you see the pricing, I feel like it's a reasonable trade-off, but I think soon we'll make it more available where we ask you less information. I'm going to go down just before I get to Sarah. I saw another question around guests and ChatGPT here, and it got marked as 2. So ChatGPT is about answering guest questions real time for humans. Where is that in this? So Enso Connect, we ran a survey on our users, our existing users, and we wanted to see, are people okay with us answering questions for them? And the responses were actually more in the no than they were in the yes, which was a bit sad for me because I'm like, man, I just wish ChatGPT could answer all these guest questions for you. So the way we're currently doing it is a 3-step process. First step for us is launching it to give you predictive responses. So we're going to generate a response. You're going to see it, and you're going to say yes or no. And every time you're going to say yes, because we're constantly training it on your system, we're right now working to make sure that threshold is always as high as it can be. We're going to come back to you in a couple months, and we're going to say, hey, what is it, Daryl, you in 9.999999 times out of 10 always click send. We always get it right. Do you want us to start sending it between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. at night? And then we're going to do that again. And the third step will be like, hey, between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., 9.99999 times out of 10, we get it right. Do you want us to just send it off to your guests moving forward? So it's just about building trust. I think AI, ChatGPT is somewhat of a new system for a lot of people out there. So it's just building the trust with you guys so that you know that this isn't going to mess up your guest experience, because we all know that one failed guest experience accounts for 6 to 10 perfect guest experiences. So we want to get it right 100% of the time, not 100%, 50% of the time. Yeah, hope that answers your question, Daryl. More questions. My goodness, I love this. You have a very engaging community, Mitch. This is awesome.
We do. We have an awesome community. We're all trying to grow, right? So,
amen.
One that I saw that was curious about. So Sarah, she asked, would Enso Connect only work with workflows? And she asked, or can it answer simple questions like best vet or restaurant that a quick Google search can answer?
So we're going to look at your content in your guidebooks. We're going to look at content in your systems, but no, it can also look at, it's using OpenAI's model. So we're effectively, you got to look at it as there's the training set for the language model that is pretty much all internet or Google specifically over the past couple of years. And then there's our instance of it, which is your guest profile, listing, what's it called? Guidebooks, your upsells, your fees, your description, like everything about your account. So if we can't find that information in that specific bucket, then we're going to look at what OpenAI provides us, which is Google information. Now, the accuracy threshold may be much lower, which is the types of responses that we wouldn't send automatically to guests, even in a few months once we open up that 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. thing that I mentioned. Hope that answers.
Very nice.
Yeah. I ran an example. I was at I was writing a guidebook for someone. We were just testing it out just to see how it would work. And obviously there can always be issues, right? So when we created this guidebook for someone who said best restaurants in Paris, and it came up with this name of a restaurant that turns out is not in Paris, but has the word Paris in it. So that's where things can start getting tricky. And that's why you got to be a bit cautious when it comes to like best vet, best restaurants in town. But again, if you've curated that content quickly, you put it in your guidebooks, you reviewed it, you made sure it was all good, then we can always use that information as part of the responses. No problem.
It's a very good point. Very good feature too. That's super cool. And Hostfully's guidebooks do something kind of similar. It's a little different than the actual like messaging, but we have a tab in there, and most use cases are create me an itinerary, and we have choose the number of kids, the ages, what activities, are you a food fanatic? So a lot of cool little things out there.
100%. And Rich, no worries on the pricing thing. Very soon with the new website that we're going to launch, we're also going to make a demo available on our website. My goal is to make this whole process as transparent as possible. In fact, I mean, as much as I want you guys to speak with our sales team and get more of a curated demo, I myself will get frustrated when it's like, I kind of want to do the demo myself. I kind of want to figure this all out myself, and then I'll spend time with you if it's really interesting. So we're getting there. It's slowly but surely, but appreciate the feedback, Rich. Meg, can we train it on our historical emails, which is a very large amount of info, which have ton and info? Apologies if this has already been answered. No. This is a great question. Can we train it? So this is going to come from all historical information that we have from Hostfully. I'm not sure how much information we're going to get backwards from Hostfully, but I think we can always run custom syncs to get as much information as possible. Mitch, do you have any ideas on that in terms of how far back we're going to look at with APIs?
I'm not 100% sure on the farthest back date it would pull. We can look into that, Meg, and I'll shoot you a personal message just so things can get cleared up for you.
For sure. I think based on the flexibility of your API, having looked at it myself, is like we can certainly pull a lot of information from Hostfully historically, specifically reservations and such. I'm just not sure how far back.
Yeah, I think the same. I just don't want to say anything for sure,
yeah,
Meg. So
yeah. Nothing worse than over-promising and under-delivering. So
exactly.
We will get back to you with the right information there. Cool. Did I miss anyone's question further back when I was speaking about it? Let's see.
Marcos, did you have one you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, we covered like all the questions that we had like on the chat bar. Here, our friend from Hoteles Pruga, he asked if there's a trial period where they can try the product.
Unfortunately not. We don't currently offer trials simply because we do put resources towards onboarding clients. That being said, if you want to trial the boarding pass, like an example on your phone, let us know. We'll send you one by all means, so you can kind of go through that flow. And we can also do more of a personalized demo if you want to connect your Hostfully account. You want to kind of just get a demo with one of our AEs to figure out what it looks like with the existing data, what information is being synchronized and such. We can also certainly do that. We don't offer trials at the moment yet, simply because, we put a lot of resources towards understanding what's unique about your business and how to configure those different flows and so on for your hospitality business.
Absolutely. Well, awesome, man. And got to say, thank you so much for coming on with us, Francois. I think I can speak for a lot of people in this webinar. Super, super insightful and super interesting too. So just want to give you a shout out on that end.
Appreciate it. And for everyone in the audience, just remember, those who use AI will replace those who don't. So start thinking about it in your business, even if it's simple things like just drafting out your emails when you're answering, your owners and so on. It's already a great saving time element. So just start thinking about that. Start thinking about your workflows, and please do not hesitate to reach out with an email. If you do end up drawing that whiteboard kind of workflow, send it to me. I would love to review it with you. So always happy to look into that.
That's awesome of you. Awesome of you, Francois. And if anyone's looking to learn a little bit more about how Enso and Hostfully specifically work together, I just dropped a link in the questions tab. We're going to be wrapping things up here, but this questions tab will still be available after the fact. So feel free to stick around. A replay will pop up. We'll send you a replay, the slides, everything you guys will need to know. So just want to say thanks again for joining us. I really hope you got a lot out of this session. I know I did. So thank you again, Francois. And until next time, my friend.
100%. Thank you, Mitch. Thank you, Marcos.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.